My beloved child, don't skip this fictional relationship story because tonight's story begins with a letter that was never meant to manipulate, frighten, or predict the future. It is a story about regret, growth, forgiveness, and the hope of second chances. Stay until the very end, because every word you are about to hear comes from the heart of a fictional character who waited far too long to say what truly mattered. The night is quiet. The stars fill the sky. A gentle rain taps against the window as someone sits alone in a dimly lit room, staring at a blank piece of paper. They have started writing this letter dozens of times, only to tear it apart before anyone could read it. Every sentence feels too small to express everything they have carried inside for so long. Tonight is different. Tonight, they decide they can no longer allow fear to speak louder than love. Slowly, they begin writing. Please, read this before you fall asleep. Their hand trembles. Not because they are weak, but because they know these words have the power to change everything. They continue writing. I don't know if life will ever give me another opportunity to tell you what I've hidden in my heart. I don't know whether this letter will ever reach you. But if it does, I only ask that you read it with the same kindness you always showed me, even when I didn't deserve it. A single tear falls onto the page. 4 months. Perhaps even years. They convinced themselves that silence would protect both of you. They believed that staying away was somehow the kindest choice. But every day that passed only taught them one painful truth. Silence does not always protect love. Sometimes, silence slowly breaks it. Listen carefully, because this changes everything. They close their eyes and remember the very first day your paths crossed in this fictional story. They remember the nervous smiles. The long conversations that lasted until sunrise. The dreams you built together. The promises whispered beneath quiet skies. Back then, they believed time would always be on their side. They believed there would always be another tomorrow. Another chance to explain. Another opportunity to apologize. Another day to say, I love you. But life rarely waits for perfect timing. One misunderstanding became another. Pride replaced honesty. Silence replaced communication. Distance slowly replaced closeness. Before either of you realized what was happening, two hearts that once felt inseparable were walking in completely different directions. Every single night since then, they have asked themselves the same question. What if I had simply spoken from my heart? There has never been an answer. Only regret. Not regret because love disappeared. Regret because fear was allowed to speak louder than love. Tonight, that changes. They continue writing. If I could go back, I wouldn't try to erase every mistake we made. Those mistakes taught me who I needed to become. But I would change one thing. I would never allow my silence to convince you that you weren't deeply loved. Their tears fall faster now. Not because they expect immediate forgiveness. Not because they expect another chance. But because they finally understand that truth deserves to be spoken, even when it arrives later than we wish. They gently place the pen down. Looking through the rain-covered window, they whisper to themselves. I can't lose you twice. The first time, they lost the relationship. They refused to lose the opportunity to finally tell the truth. As they pick up the pen once more, they write one final sentence before folding the letter. If this reaches you, please don't remember me only for my mistakes. Remember that behind every silence was someone who cared more deeply than they ever knew how to express. The letter is folded, placed inside an envelope, and held tightly against their heart. Outside, the rain begins to slow. The clouds slowly part. And somewhere beyond the darkness, a new sunrise quietly begins, preparing both hearts for a chapter neither of them believes is still possible. My beloved child, don't skip this fictional relationship story because the letter has finally been written, but the hardest decision is still waiting to be made. Stay until the very end, because sometimes the greatest act of courage is not writing the truth, it is finding the strength to let someone read it. The envelope rests quietly on the table as the night grows darker. The writer stares at it for what feels like hours, wondering whether sending it will heal an old wound or reopen one that has finally begun to close. Their heart is filled with questions. What if they've moved on? What if this letter only brings back painful memories? What if I'm already too late? Fear whispers that silence is still the safest choice. But then another voice rises within them. A quieter voice. A wiser voice. It reminds them that love built on honesty is never wrong, even when the answer is uncertain. Listen carefully, because this changes everything. Slowly, they pick up the envelope once again. They read every word one final time. Every apology. Every memory. Every sentence they were too afraid to say when it mattered most. Instead of changing anything, they smile. Because for the first time, the letter contains no excuses. Only truth. The next morning, they walk toward the old mailbox at the end of the street. Every step feels heavier than the last. The envelope remains tightly held in trembling hands. Standing there, they close their eyes and whisper. Whatever happens after today, at least they will finally know how deeply they were loved. With one deep breath, they let go. The letter disappears into the mailbox. And with it, years of silence begin disappearing too. As they walk away, something unexpected happens. The weight they carried for so long begins lifting from their heart. Not because they know what the answer will be, but because they have finally stopped hiding behind fear. Days begin passing. Morning becomes evening. Evening becomes another sunrise. No reply arrives. Still, they do not regret sending the letter. For the first time in years, they are no longer waiting for the perfect moment. They have already done the bravest thing they could. One rainy afternoon, while sitting beside the window with a warm cup of coffee, their phone suddenly vibrates. A single notification appears. Their heartbeat immediately races. Hands begin trembling. The message is from someone they have not heard from in a very long time. They hesitate. For several long seconds. They simply stare at the screen. Finally, they open it. There are only 7 words. I read every single word. Thank you. Nothing more. Nothing less. Yet those 7 words bring tears to their eyes. Not because every problem has been solved, but because the silence has finally been broken. They quietly whisper, "Thank you." Outside, the rain slowly stops. Sunlight begins breaking through the clouds. For the first time in what feels like forever, hope no longer feels impossible. That evening, hundreds of miles away, the person who received the letter quietly unfolds it again. They read every page for the second time. Then a third. Each sentence reveals something they never understood before. They finally realize that what once looked like indifference was actually fear. What looked like distance was uncertainty. What looked like goodbye was someone desperately trying to protect a heart they didn't know how to love properly. As tears quietly roll down their face, they place the letter against their heart and softly whisper, Maybe our story was never truly over. Neither of them knows what tomorrow will bring. Neither expects miracles. Neither believes life can erase every scar. But both now know one thing with complete certainty. The truth has finally been spoken. And sometimes, that is the first step toward the most beautiful new beginning. My beloved child, don't skip this fictional relationship story because tonight, 2 hearts begin discovering that honesty can rebuild what silence once nearly destroyed. Stay until the very end, because this chapter is not about dramatic promises. It is about 2 people slowly learning to trust each other again. Several days pass after the letter is read. Neither of them sends another long message. Neither rushes to erase the years between them. Instead, they allow something they never gave each other before: time. Every morning, they think about the letter. Every evening, they wonder if the other person is doing the same. Then, one quiet afternoon, another message appears. Only one sentence. Would you like to meet, just to talk? The screen remains in front of them for several minutes. Their heart races. Not because they are afraid of seeing the other person, but because they are afraid of hoping again. Listen carefully, because this changes everything. After taking a deep breath, they type a simple reply. Yes. I'd like that. No dramatic speeches. No impossible promises. Just one honest answer. A week later, they meet at a small cafe where soft music plays in the background. The moment they see each other, they realize something unexpected. The faces are familiar. But the people standing before each other are not the same people who said goodbye years ago. Life has changed them. Pain has humbled them. Time has matured them. They sit down. For a few moments, neither knows what to say. Finally, one of them smiles nervously. I never thought I'd see you again. The other quietly replies. Neither did I. Both laugh softly. The awkwardness slowly fades. For hours, they talk. Not about who was right. Not about who was wrong. But about everything that happened while they were apart. The dreams they chased. The mistakes they made. The lessons they learned. The nights they questioned everything. The mornings they forced themselves to keep moving forward. For the first time, they truly listened to each other. Not to respond, but to understand. As the afternoon turns into evening, one of them finally asks the question they have carried for years. Why didn't you tell me how you felt back then? A long silence follows. Then comes the answer. Because I thought losing you was better than hurting you. The other slowly shakes their head. Tears begin filling both eyes. You never had to carry that burden alone. Those words break the last wall that had remained between them. In that moment, neither blames the other. Instead, they both forgive the younger versions of themselves who didn't yet know how to communicate with honesty. As they leave the cafe, they begin walking through a quiet park. The same sunset paints the sky with shades of gold. Birds fly overhead. Everything feels peaceful. One of them quietly says, "Do you know what I realized after reading your letter?" "What?" "I wasn't crying because of the past anymore. I was crying because I finally understood your heart." The other smiles through tears. For the first time in years, they no longer feel like strangers connected by old memories. They feel like two people who have finally found the courage to be honest. Before saying goodbye that evening, neither asks for forever. Neither speaks about destiny. One of them simply says, "Let's keep choosing honesty, one conversation at a time." The other smiles warmly. This time, no more silence. As they walk in opposite directions, both turn around at the exact same moment. Their eyes meet. Both smile. And deep inside, both hearts quietly begin believing that perhaps the most beautiful chapter of their story has not been left behind. Perhaps it is only just beginning. My beloved child, don't skip this fictional relationship story, because tonight the story reaches the moment where hope begins to replace every fear that once kept two hearts apart. Stay until the very end, because sometimes the most beautiful relationships are not the ones that never break, they are the ones rebuilt with honesty, patience, and trust. Several weeks pass after that quiet meeting in the cafe. Neither of them tries to rush the future. Instead, they begin talking every day. Some conversations last only a few minutes. Others continue late into the night. They laugh about old memories. They share the challenges they faced while they were apart. They celebrate small victories. They encourage each other through difficult days. Slowly, without either of them realizing it, trust begins growing again. Listen carefully, because this changes everything. One evening, while watching the sunset from different cities, they begin talking on the phone. A comfortable silence fills the call. It is no longer the painful silence that once separated them. It is the peaceful silence shared by two people who no longer feel the need to pretend. After a few moments, one of them quietly says, "Do you know what scared me the most?" The other gently asks, "What?" They take a deep breath before answering, "I wasn't afraid of losing the relationship. I was afraid of becoming someone you would never recognize again." The other smiles softly. "I do recognize you." A long pause follows. Then they continue. Not because you're the same person you used to be, but because I can finally see the person you were always trying to become. Those words bring tears to both eyes. Not tears of regret. Not tears of guilt. But tears of peace. Because they finally understand something they spent years searching for. Real love is not about finding someone who never changes. It is about growing together in healthier ways. Days later, they decide to revisit the place where many of their happiest memories were created. The small lakeside path. The old wooden bridge. The bench where they once dreamed about the future. Everything looks familiar. Yet everything feels new. As they walk slowly beside the water, one of them quietly laughs. Remember how we thought we had everything figured out? The other smiles. We knew almost nothing back then. Both laugh together. For the first time. Those memories no longer hurt. They remind them how much they have both grown. As evening approaches, they stop beside the lake. The water reflects the golden light of the setting sun. The world around them becomes wonderfully quiet. One of them reaches into a pocket and carefully unfolds the same letter that started this journey. Looking at it, they softly say, "I almost never sent this." The other gently takes the letter and smiles. "I'm grateful you did." They fold it once more. Not because the words are no longer important, but because those words have already accomplished their purpose. They brought two honest hearts back into conversation. Before leaving, they make one simple promise to each other. Not a promise of perfection. Not a promise that life will never become difficult again. Only this. If fear ever returns, we'll talk instead of staying silent. The other reaches out and gently holds their hand. No more guessing what the other person feels. No more letting pride speak louder than love. No more losing each other because of words left unsaid. As they begin walking home together beneath a sky filled with stars, both quietly realize something beautiful. The letter was never really asking for another chance. It was asking for one honest conversation. And that single conversation changed everything. Somewhere deep inside, both hearts know. The next chapter will no longer be about healing from the past. It will be about building a future together, one truthful conversation, one act of kindness, and one day at a time. My beloved child, don't skip this fictional relationship story because tonight two hearts are standing at the doorway of a future they once believed they had lost forever. Stay until the very end, because this chapter is about discovering that the strongest relationships are not built on perfect memories, they are built on the courage to create new ones. Several months pass after their promise by the lake. Life slowly returns to its ordinary rhythm. There are busy workdays, family gatherings, unexpected challenges, moments of laughter, moments of disagreement. Yet something is completely different now. Whenever misunderstandings begin to appear, neither of them walks away. They sit down. They listen. They speak honestly. The silence that once almost destroyed their relationship has been replaced with open conversations. Listen carefully, because this changes everything. One rainy evening, they decide to revisit the small cafe where they met after so many years apart. The owner immediately recognizes them and smiles. "It's good to see both of you together again," he says warmly. They smile back. Taking the same table by the window, they begin remembering the nervousness they both felt during that first reunion. One of them laughs softly. "I was terrified that day." The other smiles. "So was I, but I knew if we didn't try, we'd spend the rest of our lives wondering what might have happened." They both fall silent. Not because there is nothing to say, but because they are grateful they finally found the courage to choose honesty over fear. As they leave the cafe, they walk through the quiet streets while gentle rain falls around them. One of them suddenly stops walking. Looking deeply into the other's eyes, they quietly say, "There's something I've wanted to tell you for a long time." The other smiles. "I'm listening." Taking a slow breath, they continue. "When I wrote that letter, I said I couldn't lose you twice." A tear slowly rolls down their cheek. "Now I understand something even more important." The other gently asks, "What is it?" They smile through grateful tears. Love isn't about holding on because we're afraid of losing someone. It's about choosing each other freely, every single day, with honesty, trust, and kindness. For a few moments, neither speaks. The only sound is the soft rain around them. Then the other quietly replies, "And that's exactly why I'm still here." Those simple words carry more meaning than any grand speech ever could. Months continue passing. Together they build new traditions. Sunday morning breakfasts. Evening walks. Long conversations before bedtime. Small celebrations of ordinary days. They discover that happiness rarely arrives through dramatic moments. It grows quietly inside everyday acts of love. One afternoon, while organizing old belongings together, they find the original letter once again. The envelope is worn. The paper has begun fading. One of them smiles and says, "Do you know something?" The other looks up. "What?" "This letter didn't save our relationship." A curious smile appears. "It didn't?" They gently shake their head. "No, honesty saved it." The letter simply gave honesty a chance to speak. Both laugh softly. They carefully place the letter inside a small wooden box. Not as a reminder of heartbreak, but as a reminder that one honest conversation has the power to change an entire life. That evening, standing beneath a sky filled with countless stars, they quietly hold hands. Neither wonders if the other will leave. Neither fears tomorrow. Both know that whatever challenges life brings, they will face them together. Because they have finally learned the lesson that took years to understand. Real love is not found in dramatic promises. It is found in daily choices. In patient listening. In sincere forgiveness. In truthful words. In showing up for each other again and again. As they begin walking home, both hearts are completely at peace. Neither realizes it yet. But life has one final beautiful surprise waiting for them. A surprise that will prove beyond every doubt that some stories are worth waiting for. and that the happiest ending is closer than either of them could have imagined. My beloved child, don't skip this fictional relationship story because this is the final chapter, the moment where every tear, every goodbye, every sleepless night, and every unanswered question finally finds its meaning. Stay until the very end because the greatest love stories are not the ones without scars. They are the ones where two hearts choose to heal, forgive, and grow together instead of allowing the past to define their future. 1 year has passed since the letter that began changing everything. Looking back, neither of them can believe how much life has transformed. There was a time when silence spoke louder than love. Now honesty has become the foundation of everything they share. There was a time when fear decided every choice. Now trust gently leads every step. There was a time when both believed they had already lost each other forever. Now they wake each morning grateful for another ordinary day together. Listen carefully, because this changes everything. On a beautiful spring afternoon, they return to the same lakeside where they made their promise months ago. The water is calm. Birds fly peacefully across the sky. The breeze carries the familiar feeling of hope. They sit together on the old wooden bench and quietly watch the sunset. After a long silence, one of them smiles and softly says, "Do you remember the night I wrote that letter?" The other laughs gently. "How could I ever forget?" They both smile. Then the writer continues. "I thought that letter was about asking for another chance." The other reaches for their hand. "It wasn't?" They slowly shake their head. "No, now I understand it was really about becoming brave enough to tell the truth, no matter what happened afterward." The other smiles with tears in their eyes. "And because you told the truth, we both found something much greater than the relationship we once had." They pause. Then continue. "We found a healthier love." Those words settle gently between them. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just deeply true. As the sun begins disappearing beyond the horizon, they take one final walk along the lakeside path. Every step reminds them of how far they have come. The misunderstandings that once separated them taught them to communicate. The distance taught them gratitude. The heartbreak taught them compassion. The silence taught them the value of honest conversations. Nothing was wasted. Every chapter shaped the people they are today. That evening, surrounded by their closest family and friends, they celebrate a joyful new beginning. Laughter fills the room. Music plays softly. Stories are shared. The people who love them most smile as they watch two hearts that once walked separate roads now standing side by side with peace instead of fear. Later that night, before everyone leaves, one of them quietly takes the old letter from the wooden memory box. They smile warmly and say, "This letter changed our lives." The other gently folds it one last time. Then places it back inside the box. "Let's keep it," they whisper. "Not because we need to remember the pain, but because we should never forget what honesty gave us." They close the box together. Not as a symbol of the past, but as a reminder that even broken chapters can lead to beautiful endings when people choose truth, forgiveness, patience, and love. Standing beneath a sky filled with countless stars, they quietly make one final promise. No matter what tomorrow brings, we will choose honesty before silence, understanding before assumptions, forgiveness before pride, and kindness before anger. We will never stop growing together. Hand in hand, they begin walking toward home. Not because life will always be easy, but because they now know they will never have to face it alone. In this fictional story, the words, "I can't lose you twice," were never meant to create fear. They were a reminder that love becomes strongest when people have the courage to speak from the heart before it's too late. And as a new sunrise appears on the horizon, both smile with complete peace, knowing they have found something more valuable than the love they once dreamed about. They found a love strengthened by honesty, protected by trust, sustained by forgiveness, and renewed every single day by the simple choice to keep choosing each other.